to the Because She Can series. I'm really excited for today's episode because I have a really special guest, Starla Sampaco, and she has quite the resume. So hold on with me while I introduce her. She is currently a news anchor at KCTS 9, Seattle's PBS channel. She is also the founder of Career Survival Guide, which helps women advocate for themselves in the workplace. As part of that, she's written for the Harvard Business Review and was featured on Good Morning America. And she also teaches grad students at the University of Washington as an adjunct faculty member. And in 2021, get this, she made the Puget Sound Business Journal's 40 Under 40 list. So welcome, Starla.
Hi, Hannah. It's so good to reconnect with you.
Yes, I know. I'm so excited to have you on. For those of you who don't know, Starla was Miss Washington Teen USA 2014 when I was Miss Idaho Teen USA. So we are actually former pageant sisters.
It feels like forever ago. I cannot believe, I can't believe how long ago that was.
Yeah. We were just 18 and just happy to be there, having the year of our lives. So look at where we are now. You've come a long way. And I want to start asking you, you have such an impressive resume, but I want to start with your career in journalism. So what was your path like to becoming a news anchor on KCTS? And how did you even know that journalism was something that you wanted to do?
Well, I was 8 years old when I decided to go into news. I remember being this little kid and my parents always had the TV on. They were always watching CNN. And I was also a very curious kid, probably much to my mother's dismay. I was always asking questions all the time. And so when I found out that there was a profession where you could ask questions for a living, I thought, well, this is a really good fit for me. So at 8 years old, I decided I wanted to be a news anchor or media professional, and I haven't looked back since. It took a lot of work, actually, especially being so laser focused from early on. I studied journalism at the University of Washington, but what really prepared me for this career path was the experience that I gained along the way. I think I was about 16 or 17 when I started hosting a youth media show that aired on public access TV. You can probably still find it on YouTube. I was really bad when I started, and most people are. So if any of your viewers are interested in media, just know you have to start out bad to get good later on. And so it took a long while for me to really grow those skills. And I think pageantry, competing in pageants as a teenager, really helped with those public speaking and communication skills. And I just kept working at it and continued studying through college. And then at 24, I was offered the gig at KCTS 9. So yeah, it took a while to get here, but I'm really happy that I ended up where I am.
No, that's amazing. And I think it's pretty impressive. What is the key to kind of getting your name out there and at 24 having them bring you on? Is there something that you do, a way that you network to kind of get your voice out there and be heard?
Absolutely. I think networking was the biggest game changer. Now, of course, you do need to have the skills to work in television. Like I had to know how to shoot, edit, record, also be able to present myself on camera in the way that our audiences would want us to, because the way that you speak on camera for a YouTube audience, for example, is probably different from what you do for TV, where it's a bit of an older audience and they have different expectations. So I had to really master those skills before I could really get my name out there and be taken seriously for these types of roles. But the way that I actually got this job was there was a hiring manager at KCTS 9, and he's just started asking some of his contacts, do you know anyone who would be a good fit for our new anchor role, because it's going to open up? And one of his colleagues and friends was actually someone who I interned for back when I was in college, and we just kept in touch. I would post updates on social media and LinkedIn. And so I was always kind of in the back of her mind. We had a really good relationship when I was an intern. And so she recommended me, and that hiring manager reached out to me on LinkedIn. I made sure to have a LinkedIn that really showcased the skills I had and had my best work samples at the top. And they brought me in for an interview. And it was actually a pretty quick process to get hired. And I think the networking was a big piece, but also keep in mind, I'd been working in news for more than 10 years. So it's not something that, you just get in the door just by knowing the right people. That's a big part of it, but you also need to have a lot of preparation going into it so that when that opportunity does open up, you're prepared and you're ready for it.
Right. You had to have that experience for them to be able to trust that you were going to be able to handle this job that they were bringing you in for. You did mention a little bit about YouTube and how that's kind of a different audience. And that makes me want to pivot to the career survival guide. So can you tell me a little bit more about what this is and what the inspiration was to even start it? I know that you post on YouTube, you have Instagram content, you have workshops, but what exactly is it?
Well, Career Survival Guide is the company that I started, I think in 2019, and it's geared towards women and people of color, especially young professionals who are still trying to navigate their way through their careers. And I never thought that I would start my own company. I always thought that I would be a lifer in news, meaning that I would start my career in news and then retire only in news. But as I started working a few years into the workforce out of college, I started realizing a really serious problem. And that problem is that women and professionals of color face unique barriers to professional success that a lot of our peers don't face, our peers who are white or male. And unfortunately, in college, they don't always teach you how to navigate those barriers. So you can feel really unprepared once you jump into the workforce, into your first job. I had looked for so many resources. I was always Googling, how to advocate for yourself at work. And I found some good resources, but I didn't find exactly what I needed. And as I continued working and kept running into these pain points, I realized I wasn't the only one who was struggling with this. And so I figured, if the resources that I need don't exist, then I should make them myself. So I started Career Survival Guide. It wasn't supposed to be a business. It was just a YouTube channel where I would just put interviews similar to what you're doing, and just short pieces of career content or career advice. And then that ended up opening the door to other things like working with clients like Microsoft and AT&T, because there is a big need for this type of content. And so that's kind of my long-winded answer to how I started Career Survival Guide.
No, that's awesome. And I'm really curious, how did you go from being the person who was looking for answers to all these questions to then someone who was able to provide answers to your audience? That's a big pivot to make.
Yeah, well, Career Survival Guide, my YouTube channel, started out as an interview show. So I would find people who I admired, people like my mentors or people who worked in my industry who I hadn't spoken to before. And it was basically my way of getting informational interviews with these really fancy people in Seattle who otherwise might not have been able to make time for me. And as I went on, I started getting questions, not geared towards my interviewees, but towards me. There were young people who worked in media, like college students, who wanted to know how I got to where I am, how I got internships, how I got hired. And I started to realize that even though I was still in a place where I was still looking for answers, I also gained a lot of knowledge along the way that could help other people. And so I really just started with creating content based on the frequently asked questions that I would get on Instagram or just from mentees.
That's amazing. I love the idea of mentoring others who are trying to follow in the footsteps of your profession. I get people reaching out to me all the time on LinkedIn or through my company who want to learn about consulting and what I've done within my specific practice. And so I always try to make the time to have those conversations, but I love how you've kind of made it available to everyone through the channels that you have. Are there one or two key examples of some of the lessons that you've learned or that you share with your audience that you want to share right now?
Yeah, I think one big piece of advice that I keep mentioning again and again is this idea that you are your own best advocate and no one can advocate for you the way that you can. And I think so many of us, I'll give the example of wanting to be promoted. a lot of us have this belief that we should just work hard, put our heads down, and, eventually someone will notice and they'll promote us. Well, unfortunately, that's not really how the workplace works right now, especially while we're all working from home and our managers can't always see all the work that we're doing. That if you want to get to the next level in your career, you really have to go for it yourself, because it's not really anyone else's job, and other people might not be able to advocate for you the way that you could. So that's one big piece of advice that I have for any mentee in any industry. Now, the second big thing that I always mention to folks is this idea that visibility matters, that you can't just stay small and, again, work hard in silence and put your head down. There's a lot of folks who grew up thinking that, and a lot of my clients and folks that I work with, a lot of us are children of immigrants, especially children of Asian immigrants. We have this idea that we should just be humble and, work hard and just, keep quiet about our accomplishments. But my response to that is, if nobody knows about your contributions, your accomplishments, or the value you can provide, you will not get rewarded for them. So we really do have to take the responsibility upon ourselves to talk about our accomplishments, and also just grow our professional visibility, because that's really how you get the opportunity. I would not have gotten my job at KCTS or any of my previous jobs if I hadn't been really intentional about being visible in front of the right people.
That's totally true, Starla. And I'm noticing a little bit of fuzziness with your audio. So maybe if you mute and unmute, that will help. So you have a lot going on. It sounds like the Career Survival Guide is going really well, but you're also an adjunct professor at the University of Washington. And I don't know how you have time to do that on top of everything else, but how did you get into teaching? And is this something that you see yourself doing more of in the future?
To answer your second question, absolutely. I would love to teach more in the future, especially in a part-time capacity. But I ended up falling into teaching not on purpose. I was not applying for teaching roles. I had no idea that I was even qualified to teach, because I always had this assumption that you needed to have like a PhD or something to be able to be qualified to teach at the university level. But last year, the person who ended up becoming my manager had reached out, and she had just cold emailed me and said, "Hi, I know that you are an alum of our department, and I've heard a lot about you. I was wondering if you would be interested in teaching a class next quarter," which was honestly shocking, because they wanted me to teach graduate students, and I do not have a graduate degree. So we sat down, we talked over Zoom, like you and I are doing right now, and we talked about my areas of expertise and what I'm passionate about. And I talked about Career Survival Guide and how I really want to help more job seekers learn about growing their professional visibility and also how to brand themselves as job seekers. So I ended up developing a completely new course for the program, all about career strategy and self-advocacy skills, which was such a fulfilling experience for me, because I was teaching the content that I wish I had learned when I was in school. We learn so many things in school, and a lot of it is so helpful, but a lot of it doesn't always translate to our real world experiences. So I wanted to prioritize content and information that my students could use right now as they were applying for jobs, because so many of them were finishing their graduate degrees at the University of Washington, and they really needed to find work. So it was just the most fulfilling experience, because I saw for a lot of my students, seeing their confidence grow so much in a short amount of time. And so I would absolutely do it again.
That's amazing. And I wish I had had that as a student when I was looking for jobs and just trying to get into the real world. It's something that I feel like I've had to learn the hard way, kind of like you were going through. So that's really amazing that you had the opportunity. And it just goes to show that you never know what kind of opportunities are going to come up from the things you're doing right now. You started Career Survival Guide because you saw a gap, and look at where it's led you. And that leads me into my next question, which is all about all these other crazy achievements that you have, like writing for Harvard Business Review and making the 40 under 40 list. Did that also come from what you were doing with the Career Survival Guide, or How did you make those achievements a reality?
All of those stemmed from Career Survival Guide, which feels really odd to say right now because when I founded my company 2 or 3 years ago now, I really did not imagine that it would open so many doors for me. For so many times when I was creating YouTube content, it never felt like a true business. At the start, it just felt like a really expensive hobby because I had to buy all this video equipment for myself. And so all of it stemmed from just following my passions and being able to create content about what I truly cared about. With Harvard Business Review, I was able to start writing for them because the person who's now my editor had heard about me through someone else. Again, it's this idea of networking and having a good personal brand and being very visible. They had heard about me through someone who was my mentor, and I had actually taken her class at the University of Washington, and she had written for the Harvard Business Review. And when they were looking for new writers, she recommended me and sent them my YouTube channel. And because they were also looking for more content for job seekers, especially early career women and professionals of color, I ended up being a really good fit. So it just goes to show you never know what kind of opportunities can pop up if you keep working at what you love and just keep getting to know people, keep making connections. It's really those one-on-one connections and those relationships that will really help your career take off.
It's so true. That's amazing that you leaned into those connections when you had them and just said yes to those opportunities when they came up. I think that is the huge distinguishing factor, is not shying away from when somebody reaches out and gives you that kind of opportunity.
Yeah. And I think it also just goes to show you never know what people are saying about you when you are not in the room. So, if you are a young entrepreneur or someone who's kind of struggling in their career right now, just know that so many of us have been there too. I've been there. I'm sure Hannah has been there at some point in her career, but you just never know. It just takes one person, one connection, one email to really change things for you. So don't give up hope. Just keep working at what you love and what you're passionate about.
And it also goes to show that you never know who is in the room with you. It could be somebody really important. So you always want to make that good impression, right? Even if somebody seems like they don't have any connections or they're not, like, never think that somebody isn't worth your time, because you never know what that's going to mean for you in the future. I feel like I've learned that as well. So in the room and out of the room is all very important.
Yeah.
I do want to ask about your pageant experience and how it has helped or hurt you in all of this. I mean, being Miss Teen USA, it sounds like that helped you when you were first starting out and trying to get into journalism. But how else has the pageant world and pageant life affected all of your achievements and goals?
Oh gosh. When I think back to doing pageants as a teenager, I really do think that pageantry was the main reason I was able to check off a lot of my bucket list items so young. I think I still probably would have achieved a lot of what I wanted to achieve, but I might not have been able to do it as quickly because, as you know, Hannah, I really do think pageants are like a crash course in personal branding, how to make a good first impression and how to advocate for yourself. That really is what a pageant is. It's like the Olympics of first impressions. When you step out on that stage, you're communicating with confidence. Even if you're not saying a word, a lot of it has to do with nonverbal communication. And I think especially as someone who is often the only, so I'm often the only woman in the room, the only person of color, often the only millennial, like the youngest person, there's a lot that you have to overcome in those rooms in order to be taken seriously. And I think pageants really taught me how to put my best foot forward and how to show up so that people wouldn't overlook me or, not take me seriously. Whenever I walk into a room, I always think if I've ever had an in-person interview or if I'm doing some kind of an audition for TV, before I walk into the room, I treat it like a pageant. I think I'm now turning this on. I'm going to perform. I'm going to really put my energy out there. And I think that really does make the biggest difference. You know, it's not just about how you look. That's really just surface level. It's about the energy you're projecting and the confidence that you're projecting. Because for other people to believe that I belonged in those spaces, I had to believe it first, number one. And number two, I had to communicate that to other people so that they could also buy into that, right? I mean, I'm just, you know, I'm 5'1.5" and I'm walking into these rooms. It would be really easy for people to be like, oh, it's like this, you know, this like child. Sometimes like I look a lot younger than I am. And it's really easy for people to not take me seriously or to think I don't have the credibility that I would need to be in those spaces. And so even simple, small details like how you walk into a room, whether you have eye contact with people, and just making them believe that you deserve to be there and you belong there. Those are some of the hardest skills to learn, and school will not teach you that. I had to learn that through pageants.
And when you said turn it on, I think it's really important to clarify that turning it on when you walk in doesn't mean you turn off the rest of your personality. You are still very much yourself, but you are coming in with that extra confidence to make people know that you are worth listening to. I agree 100%. I had that experience as a teen, and walking into a room with that sash on, all eyes are on you. And before that, without that, I'm just a regular 18-year-old girl at the time, you know, who was going to listen to me? But having that sash on gives you a level of credibility where your voice is now something that is going to be listened to. So you have an opportunity now with that title to make a difference and do a lot with it. And that's, I think, what I really liked about being Miss Idaho Teen USA is that people suddenly cared, and there was so much that I could get done because people were going to watch and they were going to listen.
Yeah. And I think it's fascinating too, because whether you have the sash on or not, or whether you're on or not, you're still the same person. You can still provide the same value, but the difference is whether people are receptive to that. And I think it's kind of understanding the psychology of it and really understanding how relationships work. That's what'll make a big difference, not just in your career or in your job, but just trying to get things done in other areas of your life. And so I feel really privileged and lucky that we both got to have that experience and also share that experience. That was really fun.
What a great experience. That was a wonderful year. We're nearing the end of time. So I do want to ask if there's just like any final piece of advice that you want to offer the viewers today that we haven't discussed already.
Now, I think other than what I said about the importance of advocating for yourself, I think the second big lesson that I want people to understand is this idea that failure is really part of the road to success. And sometimes it's not failure, it's just rejection, right? I think I know so many people who are afraid to put themselves out there. They're afraid to apply for jobs or even, compete in pageants, even though they really want to, because they are afraid of what will happen if they don't get their desired outcome. But what I have to say to that is when you hold yourself back from getting out of your comfort zone, really you're just stunting your own growth, because rejection is part of the process. It's just feedback, right? In order for you to get better, you need to take a stab at it and make sure that you're trying, putting yourself out there. And when things don't go your way, that's just feedback of, okay, what didn't work this time and how can I improve this and make it better next time? If you just don't try, I think that really makes your chances of succeeding 0%, right? Because you're not even giving yourself a chance. So if you are someone who's afraid to put yourself out there, but you have these big dreams and big goals, I would just tell you to do it. And I'm sure Hannah would tell you the same thing, because I've always thought that rejection is just redirection and it's just a part of the path to success. You just have to get used to it. And one thing that's always helped me when I've gone through moments where I felt rejected or I'm not really getting the results that I want, it's really empowering to just remind yourself that it is your story. So you get to write the ending. You get to choose the ending. So always remember that and just put yourself out there. Just go for it.
I love it. It's your story. You get to choose the ending. That's a perfect way to end this interview. So Starla, I do want to give you a second to share any socials or places where people can find you, what's the best place for people to keep up with what you have going on?
Yeah, so I do have a YouTube channel. It's under Career Survival Guide, but you can just type in youtube.com/Starla Sampaco. You can also find me on Instagram at Starla Sampaco as well.
Sweet. Well, that marks the end of our time. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. We will see you next time. Thank you again, Starla, for joining me. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.